Hey guys, how's everyone? Oh, let's see here. No news, good news? Well, I guess it depends on what you're talking about, Deb. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. Okay, guys. We got some headlines to go over. Hey, MG, how are you, honey? Oh, um, I'm going to start with this, the story that I have in the thumbnail as well as tagged in my headlines. Who is just me? I just barely saw the, let me see here. Hey, Ab! Oh, hi, G. It's just Mimi. Okay. Hi, Mimi. How are you? So good to see you. We have some headlines to go over, girl. Um, we have New Jersey man, 21, dies after a car started remotely by owner and rolls forward, crushing him. Talk about freak accidents. I guess when it's your time to go, it's your time to go. A New Jersey man was killed last weekend after he was pinned between two cars, one of which was started remotely by its owners, officials say. Michael Kasanovich, 21, was in the Queens borough of New York City on Friday when he died around 10 p.m. He was standing between two parked 2002 Lexuses IS 300s when one of them turned on, and after it accidentally started by a remote control system, the turned on car somehow rolled forward, trapping Kasanovich between the two vehicles, local news outlets. The Gothamist reported bystanders attempted to move the car backward, but in the course of doing so, the vehicle rolled forward once again and pinned the pedestrian between the two vehicles once more, police said. Kazanovich was rushed to the hospital where he was pronounced dead on Saturday. His obituary describes the 21-year-old high school graduate who loved to skateboard and ride ATVs and dirt bikes. Kazanovich was an employee of Barclay Environmental in Edison, New Jersey. No arrests have been made in Kazanovich's death, according to street blogs, which reported that he was looking at one of the cars to determine if he should buy it. It's unclear how the Lexus rolled forward, as the remote system isn't supposed to work unless the vehicle is placed in park. A spokesperson for Lexus told Struts blog that the remote start feature was not offered in the vehicles in 2002, and therefore someone added it to the vehicle after it was purchased. Well, it doesn't matter if it was added after it was purchased. This is a horrible situation. I mean, oh my goodness sakes. You know, you go out there and you're looking at a car, and then all of a sudden you get pinned between that car and another car because someone remotely starts it. I don't understand how it rolled forward. Again, because it would have to be in gear, or somebody would have had to, I would think, accelerated or something. I don't know. But it does, it seems to be one of those freak accidents, and it's just horrible, especially again this time of year, and so young, just so young. Um, let's see. Okay, now I wanted to give an update on the Jersey situation. The mayor, this here article comes from Time Magazine, and you guys always know when I do a Time.com article. It's usually pretty lengthy, so if I don't finish all of it, it is in the Wixit site, and you can find that site in the description box, so you can look at it as well. But this here says the Jersey City mayor says kosher market was targeted in a deadly rampage, and here's everything you need to know. A 4-hour-long rampage in Jersey City Tuesday left 4 people dead, including a police officer, in a possible anti-Semitic attack that shocked a nation increasingly numbed by gun violence. The shooters, who also died, appear to have targeted a kosher market owned by a Jewish couple, officials say. At least 2 of the people killed were Jewish, including one of the owners of the market. The details about the attack are still emerging, but here is what we know so far about the Jersey shooting. The gunman initially opened fire at the local cemetery, where they shot and killed the veteran Jersey City Police detective Joseph Seals. New Jersey's Attorney General Gubert Gruhl told reporters Wednesday. The suspect then drove a stolen U-Haul 1 mile and parked it outside of JC's kosher supermarket. One of the gunmen, David N. Anderson, approached the store carrying a rifle and began shooting at the store almost immediately. And the other suspects, Francine Graham, soon followed, Gruhl said. 3 civilians were killed at the store, and an additional victim is recovering after being shot. A suspect incendiary device was later found inside the van and removed from the scene. Jersey City Police Chief Kelly told reporters Tuesday Gruhl said a pipe bomb was also recovered. Kelly said that the shootout between police and suspects lasted about 4 hours, and that the police exchanged hundreds of rounds of gunshots with the suspects. Authorities said that they ultimately found 5 bodies inside the store, 3 civilians and 2 gunmen. Jersey City Mayor Stephen Follop said on Twitter Wednesday that he didn't want anyone to jump to conclusions about the suspects, but that he had learned enough to know this could have been far worse. The shooting claimed the lives of Jersey City Police Detective Joseph Seals, Mindy Ferenz, 32, Miguel Douglas, 49, and Moshe Deutsch, 24. Ferenz and Deutsch were both Jewish, according to Rabbi David Niederman, President and Executive Director of United Jewish Organizations of Williamsburg and Northern Brooklyn. Niederman said Ferenz owned the market with her husband and had moved to Jersey City because it was more affordable than New York City. She was a lady full of love for others, and unfortunately, her life was cut too short, he said. Douglas was an employee of the supermarket, Niederman said. And Jersey is I don't know if Jersey is a gun-free zone. I mean, I have not heard that. And I do have another article that talks about how this is from USA Today, and it says thousands gathered to mourn 2 victims of Jersey City shooting. The funeral services were held Wednesday evening for 2 victims of the Jersey shooting. Leah Minda Fernandez, 32, who owned the store that officials said was targeted by the shooters, and her cousin Mosh Hirsch Deutsch, 24, were to be buried in the New York cemetery in Cayersville, New York, according to the New York State Police. The burials follow funeral ceremonies from Francis in Jersey City and the Deutsch in Brooklyn. Jacob Fernandez, Lee Minda Fernandez, uncle, said that she and her husband, Mo Fernandez, grew up in Cayersville, an Orthodox enclave in Orange County, New York. They were a young couple who were dedicated to what they were doing, Jacob Fernandez said. They wanted people who moved to Jersey City to have where to shop for groceries, that's what it says, guys. He said that the couple were exceptionally nice people. In Jersey City, hundreds have braved the cold to say goodbye to Leah Minda Fernandez at the Call Adas Greenville. They were in tears outside the synagogue, which has yeshiva for children on the 2nd floor. A family friend told reporters that she was devastated when she heard of Fernandez's death. She was the nicest lady, said the woman, who declined to give her a name. We miss her, and she really left something in our hearts. The United Jewish Organization of Williamsburg and Northern Brooklyn issued a statement describing Fernandez as a pioneer. She and her husband, with their 3 children, were among the first Orthodox families to move to Jersey City in search of more affordable housing. She was caring and nurturing mother for her 3 children, and at the same time helped her husband, who ran for the first kosher grocery in the area, to ensure that the community's family have where to shop and feed their children, the statement read. In the Williamsburg neighborhood in Brooklyn, thousands of Orthodox Jews filled a city street for the funeral of Deutsch. The anguished cries of the rabbi could be heard as he led the funeral out on the street. Deutsch, the United Jewish Organization statement said, as Yazhavet student, as the son of UJO board member Abraham Deutsch, the community lost a promising upcoming charitable person who was spreading love and kindness, the UJO statement read. And I just say it's a horrible tragedy. I do pray for that community and those people right now, and I ask that everyone do. Now, this here is also kind of an update from yesterday. This here is from the caller, and it says the suspect is in custody after the lockdown at the NAS Corpus Christi. Here's what we know. Around 7:30 Wednesday, employees of the CCAD reported a fellow employee made a verbal threat. A release from the base said base officials haven't released further details about the threat. A Facebook post published by the NASCC officials stated that no shots were fired and that there were no injuries reported. Security apprehended the suspect for questioning without injury, and the gates were reopened to normal traffic, the releases state. Initial report said that the suspect was armed, but public affairs officers Francois Fafi Kashik confirmed the suspect was not armed when detained. Officials have not released additional information about the suspect. Federal authorities are investigating, and there is no indication that the incident is connected to the shooting that occurred at the Naval Air Station in Pensacola on December 6th, the release states. It says, previous security incidents at the NASCC. The lockdown is the fourth security incident at the base in 2019, though they were all unrelated. In earlier February, Daniel E. King, 37, was fatally shot as he was accused of stealing a vehicle and entering the base through the south gate on NAS Drive, before crashing into a barrier at the base's north gate on Ocean Drive. Later that month, the main gate was blocked by nearly 2 hours after a wanted vehicle was stopped by security after military working dog alerted to the truck. There was a be on the lookout warning for the truck, and the driver was detained. Then on October 8th, Brian Dale Robinson, 47, was charged with destruction of government property and possession of a stolen firearm after he was accused of ramming a stolen truck into the barricade of the base north gate. That north gate is pretty busy, guys. In later October, base officials shared details of projects intended to enhance security, including new perimeter security fencing, turnstiles, vehicle sighting glades, surveillance systems and with cameras, and the access controls and miscellaneous sidewalks, driveway, and landscaping improvements. And that seems like that's I've never heard so many incidences at one base. And I lived in Shreveport, Louisiana for some time, really close to, I lived across the street, literally from Barksdale, and in Bossier, and nothing ever, I mean, I'm not going to say that there wasn't people that tried to be, crazy. I think the most insane thing I think I ever saw, and it was an accident, and it was a true accident. Somebody ran, their brakes went out, or something happened, and there was a crash, and they crashed into I think it was the main gate there on Barksdale. But I mean, outside of that kind of thing, I never heard of such insane things, with all these guns and things of that nature happening and transpiring on a base. It just is crazy, guys. And This here article comes from RT, and it says that the New Jersey shooting is being probed as an act of domestic terrorism motivated by anti-Semitism, state the AG. The attack on Jersey City Kosher Grocery is being investigated as an act of domestic terrorism motivated by anti-Semitism and a police hatred. Authorities announced 6 people, including the attackers, died Tuesday's shootout. The investigation into the shooting at the JC Kosher supermarket is now a domestic terrorism probe. Attorney General Gruhl and the New Jersey U.S. Attorney Craig Carpento told reporters on Thursday, adding that the violence was believed to be motivated by anti-Semitism and hatred of law enforcement. The evidence points towards acts of hate, Gruhl said. One of the shooters, identified as David Anderson, was linked on Wednesday to the Black Hebrew Israelites, a fringe black supremacist group. Anderson made anti-Semitic and anti-police posts online before embarking on the shooting spree. According to law enforcement, a manifesto-style note was found in the stolen U-Haul. Anderson and his companion, a woman named Francine Graham, were driving. Authorities were reportedly examining social media posts made by Anderson and Graham to learn more about their beliefs. While the attack was initially thought to be random, surveillance footage showed the pair deliberately targeted the kosher market, driving there after gunning down a detective who attempted to question them about a recent murder in which they were also the suspect. They shot 3 more civilians inside the store before they were themselves killed by police in a gun battle and later lasted for several hours. Jersey City Mayor Stephen Phillip did not hesitate to describe the shooting as a hate crime against Jewish people on Wednesday, a description echoed by the New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Through law enforcement were initially more cautious in applying their dissipator. We are not in the position at this time to say indefinitely why the suspects decided to stop in front of the supermarket and begin firing immediately, Gruhl stated on Thursday, while Carpenter clarified they were clearly targeting the store. They were clearly targeting the Jersey City Police Department. We don't know why. And that article was for my dear friend Michelle, because she did have, and I hope she watches this, because she had questions. I haven't seen her here. She had questions about the who's and the whys. And again, that just, kind of confirms there is no who's and whys. Okay. So then we have from RT, the U.S. is testing a ground-launched ballistic missile that would have banned a INF treaty. The Pentagon has conducted a second test of a missile that would have been banned under the INF treaty with Russia, which the U.S. abandoned earlier this year. A ground-based ballistic missile flew over the 500 kilometers. The conventionally configured test missile was launched from Vandenberg Air Force Base in California on Thursday. The U.S. Department of Defense confirmed in a statement, giving no further details. Data collected and lessons learned from the test will inform the Department of Defense development of future intermediate range capabilities, the statement said. Thursday, test follows the cruise missile launch in August, just days after the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces, the INF treaty, expired due to the unilateral U.S. exit. Signed in 1987 at the height of the Cold War, the INF banned and the U.S. and the Soviet Union, later Russia, from fielding missiles with a range between 500 and 5,000 kilometers. The Trump administration accused Russia of possessing a missile that violated the treaty, something that Moscow has denied. Russia offers for NATO to inspect allegedly offending missile systems were ignored. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump and his advisors further rationalized their exit by calling the INF a relic of the Cold War, an obsolete treaty that no longer related strategic reality because it did not apply to China or other countries with ballistic missile capabilities. The new test comes just days after the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov visited Washington and discussed the possible extension of the New START nuclear reduction treaty with Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Moscow has said it was willing to extend the treaty, which expires in February of 2021, by 5 years to allow the time for a new deal to be negotiated. Washington has not signaled any interest in doing either. However, Trump has talked about a potential nuclear deal that would include Russia, China, and other countries, but the U.S. has not offered a specific proposal to the effect. So we are continuously testing the missiles, guys. Continuously. And we should too. And speaking of Russia and the U.S., this here article comes from Newsweek, and it says Russia condemns the U.S. allies' efforts to dominate land, air, sea, and space rather than pursue talks. Russia condemned Thursday what it considers to be efforts led by the U.S.-led NATO Western Military Alliance to advance its military capabilities on multiple fronts, rather than engage in dialogue with Moscow and campaign for global arms control. Russian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Maria Sarakova condemned NATO leaders for prioritizing the made-up Russian threat over the regions of the world that also warrant discussion. She made the remarks in response to NATO's summit last week in London, where the 70-year-old defense pact leader gathered to discuss strategy. Sarakov told reporters in Moscow that they only added the growing number of questionable positions taken by NATO as it continued to place expanding defense capabilities to deter Russia at the top of its dangerous agenda. This line taken at the summit in Wales, Warsaw, and Brussels increased tensions by providing for NATO dominance in all operational areas on land, sea, and air. In cyberspace, now space too has been added as if there were no problems elsewhere, Sakovit added. In London last week, NATO's powers affirmed they are increasing actions to protect our freedoms at the sea and air, and the further strengthening our ability to deter and defend with an appropriate mix of nuclear, conventional, and missile defense capabilities, which we continue to adapt. The alliance and declared space and operational domain for NATO announced efforts to bolster its tools to respond to the cyber attacks and warned against China's growing influence and international policies as the 29-member grouping sought to assert itself in the modern era. NATO was established. We don't care when they were established. Anyway, there's a little bit more to this article, but you can see that cyber attacks have been on the upkeep. I mean, here we had, I believe, Adam on Marfugel did a report yesterday, showed us an article about how they shut down all the communications there in Pensacola after the incident that happened, prior at the naval base. And then we have more talks today about cyber. I did a story last night about the cyber attacks with China and all. And then we have China also getting rid of all of foreign computers, foreign components, and everything, and they're pushing that. They don't want anything to do any kind of software or anything. So I believe that that is kind of a telling sign to tell you that they plan on some kind of uptick here in the next few, year or so, as if we don't already have enough attacks. I mean, here, what was it? Maryland, the whole Baltimore, I think it was under a cyber attack. They couldn't conduct any state business at all for, I don't know how long it was, just earlier this year. It's beginning to be, extremely frustrating, the way that they can attack our system, our grid, not good. Let me. Then we also have from Sputnik News, Russian military says terrorists plotting staged a chemical attack in Idlib. Truce zone. Moscow, terrorists are preparing to stage a chemical attack and the destruction of infrastructure in the south of Idlib. De-escalation zone. Major General Yuri Brokhovin, the head of the Russian Defense Ministry Center for Reconciliation in Syria, said on Thursday. The Russian Center for the Reconciliation of the wearing parties received information that the leaders of the Hayat Tahrir al-Sham terrorist group, formerly known as Al-Nusra Front, together with members of the Pasado humanitarian organization White Helmets, were plotting to stage the use of toxic substances and the destruction of civilian infrastructure in the settlements of the southern part of Idlib de-escalation zone, he said. The purpose of these provocations is the preparation of photo and video materials for distribution on the internet resources, Middle Eastern and Western media publications, with allegations that the Syrian government forces were using chemical weapons against civilians and conducting indiscriminate attacks, he added. He also said that the Russian military is continuing to patrol routers in the province of Aleppo, Al-Ashqa, and Raqqa. It was reported earlier that the White Helmets group was boosting its presence in Idlib, preparing a provocation in the province. The group enjoys wide publicity and endorsement in the West, but has been accused by Damascus of extremism and spreading propaganda. In September 2018, the Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and Russian President Vladimir Putin set up the Idlib de-escalation zone along the contact line between the armed opposition and government forces. The withdrawal of the heavy weaponry operated by militias was also part of the agreement. Both Erdogan and Putin have stressed the need for coordinated efforts to combat the terrorist threat in Syria, including in Idlib province. Syria has been engulfed in a devastating civil war since 2011, with the government forces fighting against numerous opposition groups as well as militia and terrorist organizations. And there is just no peace over there, guys. And staging a chemical attack is pretty scary. So I would definitely, well, hello, JR. How are you, honey? Would ask everyone pray, especially if there's children in that area, that no harm come to them, you know? It's just crazy stuff. And from RT, the Indian government sends troops to Assam after a violent protest against the citizenship bill. The protest over a bill giving fast-track Indian citizenship to non-Muslims have engulfed the state of Assam. The government responded with a redeployment of troops, curfews, and the suspension of internet services. So again, we have a disruption of internet services over in India. The protest in the northeastern state turned violent on Wednesday night after the Citizenship Amendment Bill was passed by the Indian Parliament. New one presidential signature short of becoming law. People targeted the homes of high-ranking members of the ruling P party, with the accused discriminating against Muslims. The government introduced a 24-hour suspension of mobile internet services in some parts of Assam, which was ordered on Wednesday to prevent attempts to inflame passions through social media. New Delhi says that the CAB is necessary to protect persecuted minorities from Muslim-majority Pakistan, Bangladesh, and Afghanistan, Hindus, Christians, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jain, and Parsis. It offers them an easy way to obtain Indian citizenship. The bill does not include Muslim in the 6 religious groups. The fact that promoted Muslims in Assam to voice their anger. Tensions in Assam have grown rapidly over the week, with protesters switching from burning copies and loathe piece of legislation to burning tires and cars after the Wednesday night outburst, which happened in defiance of a curfew. The government in New Delhi sent troops from the other parts of India. The troops restored order in the state capital, Guwahati, but protests continued on Thursday in other places. The volatile situation also caused a disruption in traffic after several airlines canceled their Thursday and Friday flights to and from cities in Assam, including Guwahati, Dibrugarh, and Jora. Similar cancellations were announced by train services in the state. Prime Minister Modi addressed the disgruntled residents of Assam, saying they have nothing to worry about. No one can take away your rights, unique identity, and beautiful culture. It will continue to flourish and grow, he tweeted. And that was just crazy. And again, we just did, there is another story about India and from Sputnik, but it's on, and I just covered it with RT's article, so we won't read that one. But there is more than one story about that. Sputnik did put out an article about it as well. German lawmakers blames Berlin for surrendering to the U.S. economic attack over Nord Stream 2. Earlier this week, the leaders of the U.S. House and Senate Armed Service Committees agreed on a 2020 National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, which specifically stipulates that a spat of sanctions against the Russian European pipeline project Nord Stream 2, President Trump is due to sign the bill into law after the Senate vote. Stefan Kort, a German politician for the Alternative for Germany AfD party of the member of the Bundestag, has berated Berlin for yielding to Washington's pressure pertaining to the Nord Stream 2 gas pipeline project. He underscored Nord Stream 2's importance in ensuring Germany's energy security, saying that attempts to torpedo the implementation of this project should have prompted the government of Angela Merkel to immediately take measures to defend it. In 2018, Ms. Merkel made it very clear that Nord Stream is a purely bilateral economic project between Germany and Russia, which is not covered by EU law. Now the U.S. has managed to link the project to the situation in Ukraine, which was de-established by Washington itself. Under U.S. pressure, the federal government yielded to his economic attack and surrendered, Corte asserted. He added that the Merkel's government is no longer able to represent Germany's interests, not to mention uphold them. According to Conte, stability in Ukraine has nothing to do with economic projects. German businessmen brands U.S. sanctions on Nord Stream 2 attack on the EU's sovereignty. The remarks come after the chairman of the German Eastern Businesses Association warned against the U.S. sanctions on the Russian European gas pipeline project Nord Stream 2, branding it fatal for the Paris peace efforts in eastern Ukraine. And again, I think this is just proves further connection that the United States has with Ukraine, and that the fact that we are bolstering and throwing so much protest against this treaty between those two countries. I know that the United States wants to stay on top of everything, but I don't know, just kind of I say we're supposed to be worried about the United States and growing the United States and hindering someone from getting gas. I think that's not our business. But hey, the United States thinks it is, so we're over there blocking them from doing that. FEMA takes your dignity, your humanity, and your life. Oh, wow, Calamity. If these sanctions are approved, this would be a direct attack on the sovereignty of the European Union and the fatal signal for Paris peace efforts. The venture has been granted all necessary permits for the EU for its completion, besides needed regulations for operation have been adopted, he noted. The U.S. closer to slapping sanctions. Earlier, Bloomberg quoted a Senate Republican aide as saying that these measures are meant to force a standstill in the construction of the pipeline. And that's all that they're worried about, is stopping this pipeline. Russia has repeatedly rebuffed the claim, saying that Nord Stream 2 is purely commercial project and accusing the U.S. of trying to use tools of unfair competition under various political pretexts. And I would have to agree. I mean, I'm not, I think that we need to play fair, but obviously we're not going to play fair. We're going to sanction everybody that we can. Here's an article from Sputnik News that says the U.S. reproaches Pakistan for misusing the F-16s during an aerial dogfight with India. New Delhi, the warplanes of India and Pakistan were engaged in air battle over Kashmir following the New Delhi's attack on the alleged terrorist militia camp on the Pakistani side of the line of control in February. The incident led to a shooting down of an Indian MiG-21 and the Pakistani F-16 jet, as claimed by the Indian Air Force. The United States reprimanded Pakistan in August, accusing the country of misusing the U.S.-supplied F-16 fighter jet jet and jeopardizing their shared security, according to the documents obtained by the U.S. News World and Report. It also expressed its dismay in Pakistan for using its fleet of F-16s in violation of the original term of sale. A letter was sent by the top U.S. diplomat to the chief of Pakistan's Air Force in August, saying that the letter services as a direct response to U.S. concerns about the F-16s, but without specifically referring to the February incident. The letter was written by Andrea Thompson, the Undersecretary of State of Arms Control and International Security Affairs, to Pakistan's Air Chief Marshal Mahad Anwar Khan. According to the website, the letter warned Pakistan over its defiance of its agreement with the U.S. by moving the F-16s and accompanying American-made missiles to unapproved forward operating bases. It also warned Pakistan that it risked the security of the weapons and could undermine our shared security platforms and infrastructures. Thompson wrote in a letter, "While we understand that these aircraft movements were done in support of national defense objectives, the U.S. government considers the relocation of the aircraft to non-U.S. government authorized bases concerning and inconsistent with the F-16 letter of offer and acceptance. The United States has sold 18 F-16s in 2008 to Pakistan. While no specifics about the end user agreements were available due to non-disclosure agreements. Publicly available documents reveal that Washington had imposed nearly a dozen restrictions on Pakistan. By far, the Pakistani Armed Forces possesses the most powerful fighter jet in its military arsenal, including 75 U.S. supplied F-16s. Pakistan first received the plans in 1982, that maintains them under strict rules imposed by the U.S. Well, why are we giving people stuff and then going to put, stipulations? It's like, okay, here's you a Coke, but you can't drink that Coke, right? Unless you're dressed in red and have a green hat on. Okay, well, here, I didn't dress in red and I didn't have a green hat on, but I drank that Coke anyway. Give me a break.
No, that's that quid-pro-quo stuff that they wanted to get the president for, but they're doing it with every other country.
It's crazy, guys. It's just ridiculous. Okay. Now, this here comes from Yahoo News. It says, America cannot stop North Korea's ballistic missiles. Only an invasion of North Korea would likely stop the regime's missiles for good, but that would entail a horrendous war. Both of these following statements are true. 1. Attempts to encourage North Korea to abandon its nuclear program through diplomacy have failed, and the chances are we will continue to fail. Were the United States to strike North Korea, the reclusive regime has ways to retaliate, which Americans and its allies cannot easily counter. The U.S. military is most worried about a North Korean nuclear armed international ballistic missile, or ICBM, with the range to reach the U.S. homeland. If North Korea has not achieved this technical feat already, by miniaturizing and matting a warhead to a reliable missile, then it is quite possible it will do so by the end of the decade. There is a real possibility that North Korea will be able to hit the U.S. with a nuclear-armed missile by the end of the first Trump terms. Then Deputy White House National Security Advisor K.T. McFarland told the Financial Times several years ago. McFarland noted that the U.S. strike targeting launch facilities, underground nuclear sites, artillery and rocket response forces, and regiment leadership targets may be the only option left on the table. McFarland did not explicitly say that the White House is treating a strike as the only option, but the White House is the right to be skeptical that diplomacy with North Korea, an ultra-nationalist regime which maintains power through a military-first ideology, will encourage Pyongyang to moderate or abandon its goals. But striking North Korea's rocket response forces, which could rain ballistic missiles into South Korea, is a tactic with a poor track track record. North Korea is mountainous, and missile launches are not difficult to camouflage and hide from aerial spotters, who often must rely on a grainy imagery to see below. North Korea has also studied previous U.S. ballistic missiles hunts and improved its own tactics. During the 1991 Persian Gulf War, U.S. and British commandos operating in a small team scoured western Iraq with coalition warplanes flying above for Saddam Hussein's Scud arsenal, while U.S. officials at the time described the hunt as highly effective post-war. Pentagon research found that if any ballistic missiles launchers were successfully destroyed. The story continues, but I think we get the point. We're not going to be able to stop North Korea and coming short of attacking them, but that's not a good ideal either. So, in other words, I believe they're trying to say that we truly have our hands tied. There's another article by the Washington Examiner that says that the very weighty test, the mystery of the North Korean missile launch. They're saying that this week has spurred speculation that it was a ground test of a large solid fuel rocket motor designed for a notional intercontinental ballistic missile, according to a North Korea monitoring site. North Korea's claim that the test was special suggests that perhaps a new engine design was fired, wrote Michael Lemon in the analyst site 38 North. What the engine might be is anybody's guess. The test could be the 2020 timeline for the North Korean ICBM test, validating new capabilities for increased reliability to strike the United States of America with a nuclear weapon. Ricky Ellison of the Independent Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance. Such a test would be ill-advised. Ellison argues North Korea putting the American population at nuclear risk during a presidential election year. With a president running for re-election is madness, Ellison writes. Test launching an ICBM would be a disastrous decision that even China or Russia could not help North Korea recover from. The U.S. intelligence community is monitoring closely, the Defense Secretary Mark Esper said at the Reagan National Defense Forum on Saturday. It's another thing that we watch because it reduces our warnings, if you will, but we have a very good intelligence of North Korea, Esper said in the reference to solid fuel rockets. We work closely with our partners, the South Koreans, who are very capable allies as well. The answer said eventually will reveal itself, Ellman said. Regardless of what North Korea may have tested, Ellison wrote, it seems likely that we will soon find out whether when either a new ballistic missile or satellite launch vehicle is fired in the coming months. So it's kind of, we're stuck up against the wall, I believe, on this. They're saying that, North Korea has definitely been developing this ICBM that could actually hit the United States, and that they have the rocket capabilities and possibly launching something very soon. And then we have another article that just kind of basically puts a damper on any kind of action from the U.S. To prevent this. Because do you shut it down before they have the opportunity to continue doing what they're doing, or do you just wait for it to for them to do it and then act? I don't know, guys. That is a hard pill to swallow there. Then we have from Times of Israel, the Knesset dissolves calls an unprecedented third election in under a year. So now they're going to have another third election in Israel, guys. And it says Israelis to head back to the polls on March 2nd in the latest bid to solve political deadlock that has engulfed country's short-lived the 22nd Knesset automatically disperses at midnight. Israelis will return to the ballot box for the third consecutive national election in 11 months on March 2nd, after its top politicians again failed to build a governing coalition in the latest twist in a sprawling and unprecedented crisis that has left the country in a political limbo for a year. The Knesset was automatically dispersed at midnight on Wednesday, but lawmakers continued debating until early Thursday on that day of the vote, with no connects. Members having gained the support of the 61 MKs by midnight deadline, the Knesset officially dissolved and a new election set for 90 days time, March 10th. However, having started the debate before midnight, Knesset members had until the President Reuven Rivlin's official announcement on Thursday that no MK gained enough support to build a coalition to pass the law setting the date for the new elections. With the March 10th falling on the Jewish festival on Purim and various other calendar considerations, the MKs eventually finalized a bill setting the election for March 2nd. The second and third readings of the vote passed by 96 in the favor with 7 against Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who was absent for the earlier proceedings, showed up for the votes that were passed just before 3:30 a.m. Thursday. That vote brought to an official close attempts by Netanyahu and the blue and white leader Benny Gantz to assemble a coalition following the September election. Talks between Netanyahu and Gantz, leader of the two largest parties on the unity agreement, broke down with both sides trading blame. Over the past 21 days, lawmakers also had the opportunity to nominate any MK for a shot at forming a government by gathering 61 signatures, but no such candidate was nominated. The April 2019 election made history when at the end of it in May, it became the first ever Israeli election that failed to produce a government. At that time, Netanyahu was short just one vote of a majority. Yair Betinu, leader of Avigdor Lieberman, had refused to join over disagreements on the ultra-Orthodox enlistment law with Netanyahu's Haredi political allies, precipitating the repeat vote in the fall. Following both elections, neither Gantz, blue and white, nor Netanyahu's Liquid had enough allies to form a government without the other to support the Israelis' Betnya party, but the two parties could not finalize the terms for unity coalition. Netanyahu will be campaigning for the upcoming election in the shadow of criminal charges against him and 3 corruption probes, which were announced by Attorney General last month. He faces indictment over bribery in 1 case and fraud and breach of trust in 3 cases. He denies all wrongdoing. He also faces an internal leadership challenge by Liquid MK Gideon Sarir in the upcoming party primary. And then the rest is pretty much about them. But so lots of things going on. Keep Israel and Netanyahu in your prayers, guys. But it does look like they're going to have a third vote. Then we have NASA identifies a near collision asteroid to fly past Earth on Friday the 13th. And programming people who are unaware. Yes, indeed. I'm prepared for it. She will be happy. I hear you. Sputnik News says that NASA is identifying another object that's going. I mean, we just had 2. The first and like the 5th or something, or the 3rd. But I will tell you that link that I gave you guys, the RSOE hazard link, it does have a thing where you can look and see all the incoming things whenever you want to, because they do update that. But it says NASA has been monitoring an asteroid which maintains an orbit around various bodies in the solar system and consistently passes through the Earth's orbit with the Sun. 13 near-Earth objects in total are expected to fly past Earth in December of this year. Earth is set to have a close encounter with an enormous asteroid, which is set to fly by nearby Earth on Friday at a speed of almost 18,000 miles an hour. According to NASA, the upcoming pass by estimated to happen on 8:25 a.m. on the 13th December. The unlucky Friday the 13th. The asteroid's orbit diagram indicates that the near-Earth approach will follow the rock intersection with Earth's orbit. According to the Space Agency Center for the Near-Earth Object Studies, the asteroid has an Earth-crossing orbit that with the Sun and will not approach from a diagonal or perpendicular direction, and instead will fly by perpendicular to the Earth. It is expected to pass by the Earth at a shockingly close 0.03033 astronomical units, and that's around 1.9 million miles away. NASA has dubbed the asteroid 2019 XO1 and estimate that it is around 243 feet wide and about a width of a Boeing 747 plane. According to the CNESO 2019 XO1, it is classified as an Anton asteroid, meaning that its orbit circulates around a number of celestial bodies in the solar system, including the Sun, Venus, Mercury, and Earth. The asteroid has a tendency to intersect its orbit with Earth's, typically when it's furthest away from the Sun. The 3rd of December marked its first time. I told you we just had a couple. Was identified in its frequent encroachment of the Earth. It also comes close to Mercury and Venus, but unlike its proximity with Earth, it does not cross the paths of the two other planets. The body first came near on November 17th of 2013, missing the planet by 8.8 million miles. It's getting closer and closer, it seems like. So it seems like it's orbiting in our system, and it's getting close. It was 1.8 in 2013, and now it's only 1.9 million miles away. Following its passing on Friday the 13th, the asteroid will not come back from the Earth's outcrop of the solar system until December 22nd of 2022, and that now it will be back up to 8.9 millions away then, according to their trajectory predictions. Okay, now this here comes from RT, and it says criticism or harassment. YouTube thought police starts purging veiled and implied threats under vague new guidelines. Internet and media personalities have come out in force against YouTube's crusade against harassment, worried that the extremely vague and ill-defined new rules will be used to selectively target users for their political views. Announcing the move in a blog post on Wednesday, YouTube said it was revamping its harassment rules in response to criticism taking aim at implied threats, personal attacks, and malicious insults hurled on the platform, especially those based on protected attributes like race or gender. Under the new rules, the company will also take a more aggressive approach to scrubbing comment sections, where it says it's deleted some 16 million posts just last quarter, while YouTube maintains that it won't go after the comments that are merely negative or critical. Detractors said that the new guidelines are vague, providing neither clear lines nor guidance. The entire reason that YouTube's became massive was YouTubers having a beef and drama tweeted conservative writer Paul Joseph Watson, a frequent critic of the platform. The line between criticism and harassment is now so blurred, nobody knows where they stand. And again, I believe in rules and regulations and everything as much as the next person, but when it infringes on your what is supposed to be your constitutional rights, it's not right, and again, this just it's another way to harbor and attack your freedom of speech. Some critics suggest double standards were at work, noting that last night talk shows, which will regularly appear on YouTube, feature the same kind of harassment. Read harsh criticism prohibited by the new rulers, but are unlikely to face ban anytime soon. Brandon Straka, founder of the Walkaway campaign, which urges Democrats to leave their party, told Fox News the guidelines will empower YouTube to control our political and cultural narrative online, adding that such rules are rarely upheld when conservative opinions are being targeted by leftist bullying. With YouTube planning to apply the guidelines retroactively to all videos, even those uploaded before the rule change, the new policies will affect old content as well as new. Perhaps some of the irony earlier this week, YouTube called for a more clarity on the Federal Trade Commission rules governing children's privacy online, arguing the rules are vague and could impact content creators on the platform. Though the company put creators front and center in its appeal to the commission, it is likely more concerned with avoiding another massive fine after the FTC forced the company to cough up $170 million over the violations of child privacy earlier this year, the largest fine in the commission history. Yeah, well, I would be kind of upset too if I had to pay that kind of money. Then anyway, so we have this article from Zero Hedge that says that the global auto markets are going to collapse are collapsed in four charts. It says it's no secret that the auto market worldwide has been mirrored in recession that looks to not have any plans of decelerating anytime soon. We have covered at length the collapse of auto sales not only in the U.S., but in leading global markets like China and Europe over the last 18 months. We have also covered the silver lining of the EV sales, and investment in the electrical vehicles may not be enough to stoke a recovery in the industry, especially with major cities like Beijing starting to shy away from purchases subsides. The contagion has spread, and a new article by Bloomberg includes 4 charts that show just how damaging the effects have been globally. The first shows that the global auto sales peaked 2 years ago at slightly under 86 million on the LTM basis. In October, that number stood at 78 million, a decline of about 9%. The second chart shows that the trends from across the globe, noting that since China's market is so big, that it has been obscuring failing trends elsewhere in the world. The chart showed China, Asia, ex-China, North America, Europe, Latin America, and Africa, Middle East, is all in a steep downtrends. North America and Europe could be argued to be the healthiest regions out of all of these, but the trends are still moving in the wrong direction. Bloomberg calls them mature markets that are not poised for growth. Looking deeper into the Asia ex-China, which still includes major countries like Japan and India, we see that all other markets across the continent are lower. Japan is the healthiest relative to others, and South Korea, Malaysia, and Singapore are all within 10% of their peak. The third charts up the grim picture across Asia despite these small points of optimism. Finally, one has to look into the silver lining of the EV market to understand exactly how bad the recession in China is getting. The fourth chart shows a stock drop in the amount of sales in China that are compromised of electric vehicles. Estimates for the year in China for 2.2 million EVs sold, which is up from 12% from last year. However, a fourth quarter moving average EV sales have shown the country EVs market recording to its first downturn. As you can see, this is the fourth chart. Recall, as we reported days ago, it is looking like Beijing isn't so excited to help sustain the EV niche in the market anymore. We also noted that Beijing's avalanche was starting to show up in the numbers. The EV sales fell off a cliff after June of this year, when the government slashed purchases subsidies from July to October. Sales of new energy cars were down 28% from the year prior. Subsidies are unlikely to come back, we noted. The government is now aiming for quality instead of just quantity, noting that the subsidies would be more costly than that they were a few years ago, when the market was smaller. Instead of Beijing said it would spend the money on building out of infrastructure like its charging stations. And that is it. So, on that. Okay, guys. This here also, I'm kind of upset about this article. And I don't even live in the UK. But I feel bad for these people because now the UK has got to vote again to decide the fate of Brexit again. Well, I mean, they've already had their vote. They're still trying to rob these people of what they voted for. It's ridiculous.
What are you talking about? That's what they're doing here in the U.S.
Well, the Congress is doing it here. They're not. We don't even get the option of a vote. You know, the Congress is taking in its hands.
I know, but I'm just saying, they've already voted, and they're making them do it again because they say the people are too stupid.
Yeah. Well, according to Reuters, the UK votes to decide the fate of Brexit again. London, voters went to the polls on Thursday in an election that will pave the way for Brexit under Prime Minister Boris Johnson, or propel Britain towards another referendum that could ultimately reverse the decision to leave the European Union. After failing to deliver Brexit by October 31st deadline, Johnson called the election to break what he cast as a political paralysis that had throttled halted Britain's departure and sapped a confidence in the economy. The face of the levy campaign in 2016 referendum, 55-year-old Johnson fought the election under the slogan of Get Brexit Done, promising to end the deadlock and spend more on health, education, and the police. His main opponent, Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, 70, promised higher public spending, nationalisation of key services, taxes on the wealthy, and another referendum on Brexit. All major opinion polls suggested that Johnson will win, though pollsters got the 2016 referendum wrong, and their models predict outcomers ranging from the hung parliament to the biggest conservative landslide since the era of Margaret Thatcher. 7 Ave of election opinion polls published on Wednesday showed the Conservative ahead of Labour by an average of nearly 10% or 10 points, although Labour narrowed the gap in the 4 of them. And of course, this is just about the polls and the Brexit. And I wanted to touch this because I think that this is ridiculous. I think that these people need to get their act together and give these people what they voted for and stop him hauling around. I think it's ridiculous that it has taken them this long to do anything over there. And again, I have no real, dog in that fight, but that's just how I feel for those poor people. They're still our neighbors, Anyway, okay, so we have the U.S. This is from Newsweek, guys. The U.S. has praised for passing a bill giving undocumented farm workers a pathway to citizenship. Bipartisanship lives. I think this is ridiculous. The House representatives are receiving praises for passing a bipartisan bill that would provide a pathway to citizenship for thousands of undocumented farm workers in the U.S. The Farm Workforce Modernization Act passed in a 260 to 165 vote, gaining support from 34 Republicans and succeeding where other efforts to see a significant number of undocumented immigrants have failed. While the bill could be shot down in the Republican-controlled Senate, immigration advocates have hailed its success among House Republicans as a positive sign. Bipartisanship lives, as for good reason, said Ali Norain, executive director of National Immigration Forum, in a statement shared with Newsweek. And there's a little bit more to this, but I just wanted to highlight that they are trying to push a bill in there for these undocumented farm workers so that they can have citizenship here. And there was 34 Republicans that agreed to it in the House. Now, again, I do not think that this bill will go anywhere because they will probably shoot it down in the Senate, or at least I hope. We just cannot be given. We have laws, we have regulations, we have things that you're supposed to do, and it would not be fair for all those people that have obeyed and applied and did the things that they were supposed to become citizens. It's just not fair. But again, we don't live in a fair world, obviously. Okay. I'm going to touch on this one really quick, guys. I skipped this when I was doing all the global stuff. New Zealand deploys soldiers on a high-risk mission to retrieve bodies from the volcano. 8 service members enlisted in New Zealand's military began a risky mission at dawn on Friday to White Island, where their objective will be to quickly locate and retrieve the bodies of individuals killed during the recent eruption on the island's still active stratovolcano. The plan for the military officials will be to fly from a patrol vessel, Wellington, toward the island and quickly begin to collect the bodies of 8 individuals, the location of 6 of whom have already been pinpointed by officials through the use of drones and other monitoring technology. The New York Times reported, citing Mike Clement, New Zealand's Deputy Police Commissioner of National Operations. They will go on the island and they will make every effort to recover all the bodies, Clement told reporters Thursday, noting that once the bodies are located, officials will then work to transport them back to the HMNZS Wellington, which will be anchored off the island's coast. At the same time that the service members work to complete their mission, a geologist will be present to analyze data in effort to determine whether or not the mission needs to be called off. Experts have indicated that the White Island volcano, also known as Wakera, has a 40 to 60% chance of erupting again within the next 24 hours. That's pretty scary, guys. So the risk is not gone. Clement told AFP, people are putting themselves on the front line to do the right thing. Our thoughts and our prayers and our love will be with them. Officials have stated that the service members will be deployed to the island with protective clothing and breathing apparatuses in case of a second eruption taking place during that high-risk mission. The launch of the mission comes as grieving family members demanded that New Zealand government to do more to attempt to retrieve the bodies of their missing loved ones. The natural disaster unfolded Monday, forcing the immediate evacuation of roughly 100 tourists who had been on the island to explore the volcano. A total of 8 people have been confirmed dead as the result of the eruption, with another 16 believed to have died, according to The Guardian. And that was from Sputnik, guys. Okay, so I'm saving that one for tonight on church. The U.S. negotiators, I'm going to read this real quick. I'm going to get it out because I don't want to look at it anymore. But this is blasphemy, and I just that's all I'm going to say. Brett Barr has an article, and I'm not going to read the article, but I just want to bring this headline to everyone's attention. Netflix releases a gay Jesus Christmas special, and that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay. U.S. negotiators research Phase 1 trade agreement with China deal awaits Trump's signature report. Earlier in the day, President Trump said that the United States and China were on the verge of signing an agreement on bilateral trade. The U.S. negotiators have reached a Phase 1 trade agreement with China, Bloomberg reported on Thursday. The deal is now awaiting the signature of the U.S. President Donald Trump. Previously, the White House announced that the deal was being prepared, but there was no timeline set for when it would be finalized. Washington and Beijing earlier agreed to ink a Phase 1 agreement, but its prospects were hammered after the U.S. introduced at the Hong Kong bill, which prompted China to sanction U.S. NGOs and restrict the access of U.S. warships and military aircraft to the territory. The Phase 1 deal is expected to cover key trade issues, including intellectual property, financial service, and U.S. agricultural exports. The two world leaders' economies have been engulfed in a trade war over a year due to what Trump has deemed as an unfair economic conditions and non-competitive behavior from China. The trade row erupted in June 2018 when the United States imposed the first round of tariffs on Chinese imports, prompting Beijing to respond in a kind of tariff war. I'm not reading anymore, but we know that the logistics of this is, hey Zeppo, how are you, honey? I do. But this here just telling you that supposedly there's a Phase 1. 1 million mothers are called for a boycott of Hallmark Channel. Ha. Okay. That's good to know. Then we have Graham says he won't call any impeachment witnesses in the Senate committee. It's a crock. Well, I believe it's a crock. Senate Judiciary Chairman Lindsey Graham, a Republican from South Carolina, Thursday that he wants the Democratic-led impeachment sham process to end quickly. Appearing on American's Newsroom with host Bill Hemmer and Sandra Smith, Graham said he'd like to end the impeachment process as soon as possible. I don't want to give it any legitimacy because it's a crock, he said. Nothing that every impeachment except this one has been conducted by outside counsel. Earlier this week, House Democrats announced 2 articles of impeachment against President Trump, alleging abuse of power and obstruction of Congress. On Thursday, the Judiciary Committee began day 2 of its impeachment markup, and after members debate and a vote on proposed amendments to the articles is expected to send them to the House floor for the debate and vote next week. To convict president and to remove him from office, over the 2/3 of the Senate votes is required. This is being driven by the Democrats' partisan. It's been rushed. There's no due process. Abuse of power. If you're looking for it in my Democratic House colleagues, look in the mirror, Graham stated. I hope that they will look at this record they used to impeach the president. If they get 218 votes, that will be a trial record. Let the House manager present their case. Let the president's lawyers comment on the House case, then vote, he told Hemmer. My goal is to end this as soon as possible for the good of the country, because I think that it's a danger to the presidency to legitimize this, Graham stated. Does this mean that no witnesses at all, Hemmer asked. I don't need any witness at all. I am ready to go, Graham replied, adding that the issue of Hunter Biden's work in Ukraine can be addressed outside of the impeachment hearings. In terms of time, is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? Is it a month? What is it? Hemmer shot back. It's closer to a week for sure, the South Carolina senator said. The trial record should be documents that they use for impeachment in the House. No more, no less. I'm not interested in any witnesses. This thing is a sham, he concluded. I want to get it over with. So I don't know if he's trying to tell you that they're not even going to hear the case. They're not going to call witnesses. They're just going to go straight to a vote and dismiss it. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. But I have mixed feelings about it. I mean, yeah, I agree with him that this is a sham, that this, that we shouldn't, I agree with him not to give it any legitimacy, but I also want, on one part of it, want to see them mop the floor with them. I want all their ignorance to be, they're going to look foolish. They have they will have, if they have a court and when they call their witnesses, they're not going to have any witnesses. Everything is hearsay. It won't be used. You cannot convict somebody on opinion. You cannot convict somebody on someone's beliefs. My husband being a smarty bat. Evidently you can if you're a Democrat. Well, I just don't think that this impeachment process has been fair by no means. It's unconstitutional, and like I said, I have mixed feelings about this. I do want it to be over with, though. That is for sure. So I am in agreement with that quickly, though. Now here we have another article that just shows the abuse of power of Democrats, in my opinion. Here is this article from the Washington Examiner. You be the judge. The law is the law. Virginia Democrats float prosecution, National Guard deployment if police don't enforce gun control. Democratic lawmakers on Capitol Hill say local police who do not enforce gun control measures likely to pass in Virginia should face prosecution and even threats of National Guard. And November's Virginia legislation elections that led to Democrats taking control of both chambers. The gun control legislation proposed by some Democrats moved forward, including universal background checks, an assault weapons ban, and a red flag law. Legal firearm owners in the state, however, joined with their sheriffs to form a Second Amendment sanctuary, continues which declared the authorities in these municipalities uphold the Second Amendment in the face of any gun control measure passed by Richmond. Over 75 counties in Virginia have so far adopted such a Second Amendment sanctuary resolution in the Commonwealth, the latest being Spotsylvania County. The Board of Supervisors voted unanimously to approve a resolution declaring that the country police will not enforce state-level gun laws that violate Second Amendment rights. Virginia Democratic officials, however, already say local law enforcement supporting these resolutions will face consequences if they do not carry out any law the state legislature passes. I would hope that they either resign in good conscience because they cannot uphold the law which they are sworn to uphold, or they will be prosecuted for failure to fulfill their oath. Democratic Virginia Representative Jerry Conley told the Washington Examiner of local county police who may refuse to enforce future gun control measures. The law is the law. If that becomes the law, you don't have a choice, not if you're sworn officer to the law. Democratic Virginia Representative Donald McCann suggested cutting off state funds to counties that do not comply with any gun control measures that pass in Richmond. This certainly risk funding because if the sheriff's department is not going to enforce the law, they're going to lose money. The county's attorney offices are not going to have the money to prosecute because their prosecutions are going to go down. He said. McCann also noted that the Democratic Virginia Governor Ralph Northam could call the National Guard if necessary. And ultimately, I'm not the governor, but the governor may have to nationalize the National Guard to enforce the law. He said, that's this call because I don't know how serious these counties are and how severe the violations of law will be, but it's obviously an option has. Virginia Attorney General Mark Carradine blamed the numerous Second Amendment resolution in the state of the gun lobby as a tactic to frighten state residents. The resolution that are being passed are being ginned up by the gun lobby to try to scare people. What we're talking about here are laws that will make our communities and our streets safer, Herring told CBS 6. Virginia passes these gun safety laws that they will be followed, they will be enforced, he added. And if you remember, I did an article a couple of days ago, I think, where one of the sheriffs says he will deputize thousands of people. So I guess that's, his reaction to all of this, that he'll just make everybody deputies. I think that this is a travesty. But again, I keep telling you guys, the Constitution is dead and they are just continuously shredding it away. Whether they're doing it at the federal level, they get their minions at the state level, and they're going to take away people's guns. And obviously, they're telling you they're going to bring in the National Guard to take your gun. I pray for those people in Virginia that there is some way that they can, refrain and protect their Second Amendment. If they have to take suit and go to the Supreme Court, all the way to the Supreme Court, because this is in violation of their Second Amendment. And I think that these red flag laws in every state need to be overturned. But, I'm just one woman that does these headlines, and these are the things that we come across every single solitary day. And we vote on sanctuary soon. All right, so are you in Virginia as well, Grace? Oh, Zeppo. Anyway, so then, yeah, you're in Virginia. I pray for you, sweetheart, and I pray for that whole state. I do. Then we have an article from RT that says the U.S. Senate advances a bill giving the State Department the right to call Russia sponsor of terrorism. The U.S. Senate Foreign Relations Committee has approved a bill asking the State Department to determine whether Russia falls under criteria of a state sponsor of terrorism, potentially opening a way stricter sanctions. The prestigiously titled Stopping Malign Activities from Russia Terrorism, SMART Act, could potentially bring the already strained relations between Moscow and Washington to a new low. Introduced by Senator Cory Gardner, a Republican from Colorado, in April, it requires the Secretary of State to give appropriate congressional committees a straight answer on whether Russia could be designated a sponsor of terrorism. The bill also requires that the State Department to determine and report to Congress whether the militia in self-proclaimed Donetsk and Luhansk republics in eastern Ukraine can be considered foreign terrorist organizations. The report should be presented no later than 90 days after the proposed law comes into force, should it pass both the Senate and the House, and be signed by the President. So far, the Foreign Relations Committee cleared to be further debated and potentially passed by the Senate only. A handful of countries have been designated by Washington as state sponsors of terrorism, including Iran, Syria, North Korea, and Sudan. Should this bill be approved, it would give the anti-Russian interest in Washington yet another opportunity to slap Moscow with more sanctions. The committee actions just a day after Russian Foreign Ministry Sergei Lavrov visited Washington and met with both the Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and President Donald Trump. His visit sparked yet another wave of anti-Russian hysteria among the House Democrats in particular. Congressman Adam Schiff, the Democrat from California, who spearheads the Trump impeachment efforts in the House, called it no less than a success of Russian propaganda. Lavrov replied by calling such a reaction to ministerial level contacts normal to any country patently absurd. And again, and here, of course, all we've heard about is this Russia collusion. So you would think that the Democrats would be pleased and happy about these new sanctions, but now, of course, because it doesn't go with their narrative, it's ridiculous. These people need to get a grip and get a life. I mean, give me a break. You can't have it both ways. You can't be hollering, Russia meddled in our elections and then not be happy with what seems to be an answer to all of this. Anyway, that is all of my headlines, guys, for today. I am going to be making a special video, but it's going to be uploaded, and it's going to be short, but I'm doing it on my iPad, and I'm going to upload it. It's just a map to show you guys. I want to bring awareness of all the activity of the earthquake that's been transpiring. I have that. I don't know if anybody had looked, but it was pretty cool. Last night I noticed, with the help of a friend of mine, how active, because we've been just in awe with everything that's going on that map. But it looked like there was almost like a straight line drawn down the middle of the United States, and it was so active. We had earthquakes from California all the way to Virginia, and not in every state, but it was pretty interesting, I think. And then there was and then if you follow that line across and then you look at the world map, there was several of them on the same line over in Europe. So I'm gonna make that video, and I'm gonna post it up so you guys can see what I'm talking about, how active in the uptick in earthquakes that we have going on. I mean, it's been crazy. And again, we know about the anyway, so I will upload that shortly after I end this, and you guys can look at the earthquakes. Exactly, Zepso. It is exactly right. Anyway, I hope to see everybody at Bible study at 8 o'clock. If not, we will see you later. Hope to see you in Marf. Marf's been on fire, guys. If you're missing Marf, you're missing out. God bless each and every one of you. I love y'all. Bye.